Near death. Pretty much dead. Not quite dead yet. You're listening to Our Different Take, episode 13. Welcome everyone to Our Different Take. My name is Brian, proud father of two awesome boys, an epic Star Wars fan, and to my left is Matt. Oh, welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Really looking forward to this podcast about astral projection. Very interesting.
Astral projection. Very nice, Matt. Glad you're here. And to Matt's left is Scott. Oh, welcome, Scott.
Hey, guys. Thrilled to be here again. This is so cool to be learning all this stuff, seeing all these things. I've always been interested in conspiracies and paranormal and anything weird and spiritual stuff. This is all so cool. So glad to be here again. Father of three girls and married and ready to learn some more stuff.
Very nice. Well, glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
So today we're going to be talking about astral projection. And Scott, that's not for when you eat Taco Bell. You don't have projection out your
astrals.
Yes.
Obviously, we're not here last night.
Do we need to bring your wife in for a quick interview?
Anything
like that? No?
She hightailed it out of here. She
poor
didn't want any more astral projections in this house.
Well, today we're talking about the real astral projections. We've got some scientific explanations for it, as well as some how-tos, and we'll just kind of explore and get deep into it and see what comes of it.
Now, I'd never heard this before this program, like the term astral projection. What is that? Tell everybody what we're even talking about.
Astral projection. So let's go over the definition of astral projection first, because we talked about remote viewing last podcast. This one's a little bit different than remote viewing. So astral projection, or probably what we'll say more in this podcast, will be out-of-body experiences. But astral projection is a term used to describe an intentional out-of-body experience. It assumes the existence of a soul or consciousness called an astral body that's separate from the physical body and capable of traveling outside the body throughout the universe. That's the definition of astral projection or out-of-body experience. I think through a lot of my research, more people were talking about OBE or out-of-body experience instead of astral projection, really.
Yeah.
You guys came in.
That's what I've always heard about, is the out-of-body experiences, like near-death experiences and things like that. What wasn't until reading up on this stuff that I realized there's people that actually consciously, is that even, maybe not even consciously, that have figured out how to disconnect willfully. That's probably better, willfully rather than consciously.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that was the thing. I thought it was just kind of an accidental thing that happened when you just about died somehow.
Right.
Well, I think a lot of people do it accidentally, if they do it at all, or have a near-death experience or whatever. But, over in India, everybody would tell you that it's common among people from the Hindu religion and Kush Hindus, and there's something else.
Six?
Maybe Sikhs or six. Is that what they call it? A Sikh?
I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Yeah.
I was actually listening to a YouTube yesterday, and a couple of guys were talking about it, and they were, it was interesting. They were talking about it like they were experts. They knew so much about it, and they were talking away. And then the one guy asked the other, he goes, "So have you ever done that?" Well, I think I might have at one point in time. I felt like I was kind of floating over my body once, and the other guy's like, "Yeah, me too," And I thought, well, maybe it's not as common as as they want you to believe. Maybe it's very uncommon. And the ability to just like leave your body and go places. If that was real, I don't think I'd even work. I'd just hang out and go out of my body and go a bunch of different places all the time. I could think of 10 different places I'd go right now. That would be awesome.
Laying in
I
your
could
bed.
see where it could be kind of like a drug, where like people are like, I don't like my life, and so I'm just going to go get high all the time, and so they kind of
Right.
use it to get away from where they're at.
To escape maybe. But the thing that gets me is in those religions, you're constantly striving for a omni-galactic, super omni-galactic inner oneness or whatever it is that you can attain. You just attained it, where you're perfect enough, and then you can experience these amazing nirvana-like things or whatever. And I think it might be a tool of certain religions to keep people on the path in some instances. I'm not doubting that it's real. I just don't know how common it is.
Didn't we have a couple of new listeners from India recently?
13 or 14, actually.
Maybe.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody.
Was that a...
You got it.
I don't think that was intentional, was it? So, okay, great. So maybe some of our Indian listeners might be familiar with this. If this is common to Hinduism, which I don't know. I don't know if it is. I mean, if maybe you're saying that you know somebody who's a Hindu that's said this, or are you just?
I was just researching.
Okay.
I just in my research, especially on YouTube, there's a lot of Hindu folks talking about this, and so I assume that must be part of their religion, because that's kind of how they talk about it. Like OBEs or soul leaving body going to look around at stuff is a thing.
Maybe some of our Indian listeners will reach out to us and give us their take on it.
It would be amazing. Please do that. That would be awesome.
I would love
it
that.
Would be. I think the mental fortitude that you need in order to do an OBE, or what we talked about last podcast, is beyond the realm of some people, I think, because it takes an actual skill to quiet your mind and do this stuff. Or I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people don't do it, because they can't. They don't have the mental
there may be
fortitude
some discipline
to do it.
involved.
Right. Some people do say they're common, though. 1 in 20 people, they say, will have an OBE in their lifetime. 1 out of 20 will have it. Some people also said it happens while people are fainting. So you faint, or you start fainting, and then that's when your mind kicks into possibly part of this REM sleep that we're going into, and then you have an OBE. So I think maybe more people have it than they think. They just don't realize it. Or a lot of people fainting out there.
I don't know. I used to make myself pass out when I was a kid a lot.
You did?
Just for fun.
Just for fun?
You ever done that before as a kid?
Put a bag over your head?
No, how did you do that?
Oh, man, we'd hyperventilate and then just hold your neck, lean back and just pass out.
Oh.
Wow.
That explains a lot,
Sure
doesn't
does.
it?
That all is coming together now.
But, yeah, a lot of kids did it. And then somebody at the junior high either got really sick or died, and then we kind of stopped doing it. But,
wow.
You can make yourself pass out, and you experience all those things. The tunnel, there goes everything, kind of zeroes in and goes to nothing, and you get real tingly and lightheaded, and I mean, it kind of feels like what you would think an out of body experience is, but I always came back sometimes with pantyhose wrapped around my neck on a doorknob, or something like that. But I always
was that your pantyhose?
I'm just kidding. but I can imagine. I can imagine sometimes those things, like they feel very euphoric when you pass out, or when you're when you're losing oxygen to your brain or whatever. It does feel kind of euphoric.
Well, what was it? The guy from NXS who died in a hotel doing that in a crazy sex thing.
Mm-hmm.
There have been several. Who's the guy from the Kung Fu the series? What was his name? He was on Kill Bill as well, the movie Kill Bill. He was a old school Kung Fu fighter guy.
Carradine?
And he actually died.
It's not David
Carradine. David Carradine.
Really?
Yeah. They found him in a hotel room in Japan, and he'd been over there. He's big into martial arts his whole life, and he'd been over there talking with some martial arts folks and visiting people and stuff like that. And they found him in his hotel room with pantyhose around his neck, and he was autoerotic asphyxiation, right?
Mhm.
Where you're spanking the monkey and choking yourself. And
Choking yourself in a couple of ways.
Yeah, man. And he never woke up. He's beating that thing like it owed him money, so
Oh, man.
but he never woke up. What a horrible way to go.
Well,
right? I mean, not so horrible for you, but horrible for everybody else, like your family. I mean, the jokes will never end. Oh yeah, your dad's the guy, right? Was in a pair of high heels, and, so like, I mean, it's anyway. I digress, but I'm sure it's a very euphoric feeling to die that way. So there's that.
How did we get here? I'm just
Where did we go?
just trying to think. We were talking about near-death experiences. How did we get to autoerotic asphyxiation?
If anybody's from India, please write us. I'd like to. Let's go back.
Thanks for tuning in to the podcast. We'll see you later. Oh,
well, sorry.
Okay, then. All right then.
Next, moving on.
Do you have anything else to add with that, Scott?
Not yet.
So what I had heard kind of goes along with what you were just saying, Brian. With I'd actually seen a statistic that said maybe 1 in 10 people have had it. I don't know where people get these statistics from. So who's right, who's wrong? I have no idea. But one lady actually went so far as to say that she thinks that vivid dreams may actually be out-of-body experiences. So, like, if you ever had one of these dreams, it's like so freaking real. It's like you like take notice. Like, man, this thing is important, and you don't know why it's important, but you know it is. And she's like, those are the kind of dreams that are likely actual out-of-body experiences. That in your sleep, you left and you went somewhere and you did something. And so she says everybody has had an out-of-body experience. They just don't know it. That was her claim.
So if you're having a dream and you have an out-of-body experience, does that mean that you're traveling to a real time and place? Because a lot of my dreams are not in this world. They're in outer space, or they're something going on somewhere.
Or that island you told me about, the island dream.
Or the island dream where you're getting chased by a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Getting chased by a T-Rex. But it seems so real at the time.
It was real.
Seriously. In the multiverse, there's probably an island with a T-Rex on it somewhere.
A little floaty.
One of the guys that I was watching, he actually said something along those lines. He said, we got this construct of mind, body, spirit. And he said, that is false. He said, we got to think way beyond that. It's a multi-dimensional mind and body and spirit. It's like you were just saying a minute ago, multiverse kind of a thing, where we're in different I don't even know the words to use, but paradigms, different whatevers. And so, yeah, we may be going somewhere real, but it may not be somewhere real here.
Right.
It may not be like I'm going to Chicago in an out-of-body experience. It'd be like going to where the island where Tyrannosaurus Rex chases you. I don't know. But according to him, all of that stuff could very well actually still be real somewhere.
I think all of the phenomena we talk about on this program, all of the things we've covered so far, multiple dimensions account for a lot of what happens and what freaks people out and what is odd and strange and all those things. I think a multiverse fits nicely into that. Really?
So we're traveling to
It's
a different dimension.
Maybe your spirit can
maybe.
do that. I know your body can't,
Right.
but
And I think she wasn't necessarily saying that all of them are that. I think she was saying that some of them are that. That some of them just be our subconscious trying to tell us something. Trying to figure out what happened in the day, and it's trying to put it in symbols that maybe are going to make more sense to us in our sleep or whatever. So it's just not. She's not saying that everything is, but she was pretty clear in saying that everybody has had an out of body experience. They just didn't necessarily recognize it. And one of the other guys I thought was interesting was saying, there's a lot of people that have probably had these things, but like, people that are so good at some things that they just know how to do it very well, and they just wonder why everybody else can't do it.
right.
And so they just, to them, it's not a special skill, it's not a special thing that happens. They just are really good at something, and so they just assume that everybody has that same ability. Like people that can see like really really good, and they just think everybody can see really good. It's like, I don't know why you can't see this, but it's just because they're built like that. And so one of the guys was saying, well, there's a lot of people that kind of have this innate uh, almost a psychic spiritual awareness kind of thing, where they know how to do this, and to them it's not abnormal, it's not uncommon, it just is. And so they probably don't go around talking about it to everybody because it's just something that happens. And so they may not even be included
Right.
in these statistics of 1 in 10, 1 in 20, because it's just how they live. So I thought that was an interesting thing to think about.
Right.
That is
Um,
interesting.
but these are also they're real common in near death experiences. So like people that have had they get in a car wreck and they almost die, and so you hear so many of these stories where they actually see the car wreck. They actually they're walking around as though they're an observer of of the
Right.
accident, and they're like, man, that's a really bad accident. And they start looking at it and they're like, wait a minute, that dude in there in the car, that's me. How is that possible? You hear this kind of stuff all over. It's all over YouTube. It's all over if you just look for them. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm inclined to think that anything that happens like that over and over and over again has to have some kind of merit to it. it there's
You know, I think you're absolutely right, and there may be something to that. I have experienced one of the most terrifying dreams I ever had. Um, I was actually floating in my dream. I was high up near the ceiling of my apartment, and I saw a lot of different things happen in my dream. And then I was visited by a demon. It was actually really terrifying. That dream, and the demon. It's a long story, but long story short, the girl that I was with at the time was kind of a magnet for craziness. I think I've told this story to you before, Brian. And she, we were in the bedroom. We had, I think we just got done shampooing the carpets in the apartment, and we crashed out pretty late. And in my dream, there was a bright light coming out of underneath the front door of my apartment. And when I don't recall walking, but I kind of traveled through the hallway, and in the living room, everything was white. And I didn't have any white furniture or anything, but everything was white in the dream. The kitchen, the living room, all the furniture, and there was a light coming out from under the door, and I could see people arguing. And my girlfriend was there and some other people, and there was an intense argument going on, and I was above everything, kind of near the ceiling. And the front door opened, and everything changed, and I saw this little floating, almost like a mote of dust, and it started to spin. And anyway, it spun to the point where it was almost like a laser show, and you could see uh, different pieces coming together, and it was a skull. And then muscles started to form on the skull, and the skull turned towards me, and this voice screamed, "Now you know that I am real," like about 2 inches from my face. And I just woke up screaming. The most intense dream I've ever had. All the cupboards in my kitchen were open though when I woke up, and all the drawers were open in my kitchen. was the weirdest thing that and a lot of weird things happened around her, but I believe that probably if I had to describe a dream that was like an out of body experience, that'd be probably the closest thing I could think of.
Well,
Would be that. Sorry, that was long winded, but
did you have pantyhose around your neck?
Not that time.
no, not that time.
Okay.
That
Just
you know
checking.
of. Yeah.
Looking for a commonality here. You never know.
Me and David Carradine, pen pals.
He's got his own pantyhose line now, doesn't he?
Is he?
Mhm.
I don't know, man. I don't think he's got anything now. Everything he was going to be is gone. So
I know. It's sad.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, some scientists or quote unquote scientists that think OBEs are actually has nothing to do with spirituality, anything like that, but it's more of a physical. It's a physical something that happens in your brain, and they can reproduce it and they can trigger it. So that's what some people say it is.
Well, how do you guys feel?
Well, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle because I've got two stories here. First one is the Air Force when they train their pilots. This was down in Texas. You know that the spinning thing where they put the pilots in there and ramp up
like a centrifuge?
kind of like a centrifuge, yeah. Well, it's called a G-lock, and they put pilots in there, and they were spinning it up, and before they pass out, kind of like what happened with you on the playground, Matt, is the tunnel vision comes in, right? And they see a tunnel, and they would spin it up even faster. And the pilots would say that they felt they were getting close to a near-death experience. If they spend them a longer period of time, then they said they had an out-of-body experience. So that along with a Swiss neurosurgeon in 2002 was operating on this patient with epilepsy. She had it was really bad, shaking all the time. I mean, it was horrible. And they put an array actually on her brain underneath the skull and the skin. And they mildly stimulated the right part of her brain. So if like on your right side of your head, right where your ear is, there's a part of your brain in there that controls your auditory, visual, all these systems that keeps your body in touch with what's going on. Like, so it knows where your hands are, it knows where your feet are. It takes all the stimuli from what you're seeing.
Okay.
So it knows where you're at all times, right? So they stimulated this lady's brain about very mild. It's like super mild, less than what a light bulb is. And she said that her body became distorted. Her legs got really long, her legs got really short, her arms got long, her arms got short, like her body completely distorted. They put a stronger stimulation, okay, about 1/60th the power of a light bulb, they said. And she said she automatically was above her body looking down at it. So she had an out-of-body experience that was produced by electrical stimulation to that certain part of the brain. So I think there's a combination. I think there's more than one explanation for it, where if we can reproduce it by this. Now, they didn't say that she went to a different plane or anything like that. It was just right above where she was having surgery. But nonetheless, it was still reproduced. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Is it all religion? Does it have something to do with that? Does it have to do something with spirituality? Is it all physical? Some of both?
No, I think it's a real phenomenon. I think I would think the majority of it is physical for most people. I don't think people normally leave their bodies in spirit form every night when they dream. I just don't think that's a thing. I think fMRIs would probably back that up. Functional magnetic resonance imaging on sleeping people can show lots of different brain activity and things going on in there. And I just don't know that you're leaving your body when you dream, except rarely, maybe in rare circumstances. And I'm no scientist. I'm just from looking at it all. I mean, it is a really cool way to get people to meditate if that's your end goal, and to tell them that they're probably not going to be able to, to leave their body and have an out of body experience unless they're, really good people and they practice all the time and do all these things. It gives them something to shoot for instead of thinking about, food and stuff like that. I think some of it's real.
So there was a guy back in the early 70s. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Robert Woodward, is that it? I forget the guy's last name, so forgive me on that. But he was the head of NBC Radio at the time, so fairly well-known guy, and fairly
Robert Monroe.
Monroe, yes, of course, Robert Monroe. Yeah. So so he was fairly wealthy, didn't need notoriety because he already had it. He was the head of NBC Radio, which was a big thing back in the 70s, and I believe it was he had a heart attack or something happened to him, and he nearly died and had an out of body experience, and then over time began to have them without being ill. Like he just started to have them on a regular basis. And then he kind of started to experiment with them. Like he would go just a little bit farther each time or go to a little bit different places. And until he finally left the actual apartment that he was in, because he was kind of afraid that if he left it, like there was this door, and he was like, if I go outside the door, I'm probably going to die. I'll never come back. And one day he's just like, well, I'm going to try it anyway, and hopefully I won't die. And so he did, and he started going all these places, doing all these things. And he told somebody about it, and that person's like, Bob, you need to write a book about this. He had been documenting the experiences anyway. And so he wrote a book about it, and he's kind of the one that brought this to light. He was the one that kind of popularized the idea of out-of-body experiences. And he then wanted to make sure that it was legitimate, and so he hired a couple of physicists, I believe it was, engineers, that he would kind of document this whole process with. He wanted to prove that it was real, and so he didn't get people that agreed with him. He didn't get people that that believed what he was saying. He was just like, here's what happened to me, and I want you to be able to either prove to me that it is false or prove to me that it is true. And so they went about doing whatever they needed to do to figure that out. And over time, they became believers because it actually happened to them as well. They had out-of-body experiences, and they corroborated that. Like independently, they went in and recorded their experience, and then they went and played it back, and it was the same experience that they were having with one another. And they're like, wait a minute, this actually happened. Like this thing actually happened. So these guys that were not believers in the stuff became believers in the stuff. And one of them ended up forming the Monroe Institute, which I believe is still active today. And they teach you how to willfully do these out-of-body experiences. So it's an interesting thing to me. I don't think it's made up. I think that there's enough corroboration of stories that it's legitimate. I don't know how. I don't know who can do it. I don't know if you got to have a certain belief set. They say you don't. They say your beliefs actually get in the way of it. That you're more likely to have it if you don't really have any beliefs. Because the beliefs will tell you, well, you can't do this and what have you, which I tend to agree with that. I don't, kind of growing up analytic, that was one of my things. I always wanted to understand this paranormal stuff, but I really could never do it because I was so interested in studying whatever it was that was happening to me at the time. My mind would get preoccupied and it would never happen. So all these other people around me that are just kind of like, dumb and happy, and they're like, oh, look at this
Right.
beautiful experience, and I'm like, I got nothing. But it's interesting watching you, though. But yeah, I think it's real. I don't think it's something
Right.
that's made up in your mind. I mean, certainly there's people that could be making it up in their mind because they just want to not be left out. Their friends are doing it, and so
Right.
they don't want to feel stupid and whatever.
No, I think it's real. I think people experience it. It's just, what is it? I think people do experience things.
How big of a role do you think religion plays in whether this is effective or not? Because I was watching again on
Mhm.
YouTube, and the Pat Robertson, who's part of the 700 Club. Uh, he was talking about
Is he
how,
still
Yeah,
alive?
I think he
yeah,
is.
well, I'm assuming so. I didn't look at the date on this video,
It's like 100.
but yeah, he looked a little old for sure.
Yeah.
But what he was saying was that, he believes this is right from the devil and you shouldn't be doing it. It'll put you in a state of mind that will let, you know, demons and everything come into you. It's just not good to do. So he's taking it from the conservative, part of, spirituality, whereas don't even touch it
Yeah,
because, you're going to be in for a bad ride.
Interesting. I don't know, man.
yeah,
I'm kind of torn. I believe in demons, and I believe in demon possession. And so, you play with Ouija boards and stuff like that. I think you're inviting trouble, but I don't know necessarily that you're inviting trouble. You're not really calling on anything. You're not communicating with anything.
Right. Yeah.
I don't, and I gotta say, like, my mom's a huge fan of Pat Robertson,
right.
and she's scared of everything. So, well, I mean, and a lot of people are, right? Anything, man, it's from the devil. I don't want nothing to do with it, and so they kind of close their minds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't know. I think you can open your mind too much for sure, but I don't know. I used to try when I was a kid, to have an out of body experience, and the closest thing I ever got really on purpose was kind of like a vibrating feeling, and that was it. So, it works for
Am I
some
going to have
folks,
to
I'm sure.
cut part of this podcast out for you to talk about pantyhose and vibrators?
No, Brian, you bastard.
Yeah. Let me make some notes here. What's going on here?
Whatever, dude.
I think a lot of this stuff that with the Pat Roberts, I used to be a big fan of Pat Robertson too, and I think a lot of the beliefs I've kind of changed the thought process on a lot of those things. It's like, what's your intent? You can take just about anything and you can say it's good, it's bad based on your intent, right? It's like sex. Nothing wrong. There's nothing good nor bad about sex. It just is. Sex is sex. Now, if you take that sex and, go rape somebody, that's bad, right? But if you just, you go have sex with your spouse, whatever, that's good, right? Most people, so it's not the sex that's the intent behind it. And I think that a lot of these things, it's the same thing. What are you doing? Why would you be doing what you're doing? Like, I think when we started the broadcast, it's like some people maybe it's just, I hate my life. I don't want to do anything productive. I'd rather just smoke dope and leave, this presence because I hate it. So
Right.
rather than investing in themselves and the people around them to try to make a better life for those people, they just want to escape and go smoke some dope and kind of float away. And I think an out of body experience, you could do that. You're just like, I just want to run away. I want to go somewhere. Um, Hell, you see with video games, right? People get into like
Right.
Second Life and all of these
Mm-hmm.
things where they just like, I hate my life, and so this is an escape. And I think if if it was an easy thing to do, some people could use that as a way to escape. And so I think your
Yeah.
intent, I think, is paramount. It's very, very important as to whether this is good or bad. I don't necessarily agree with Pat Robertson that says it's just definitely bad.
No, I'm sure his motives are good too, but I think I think I agree with you. It all depends on where you're coming from.
Right. There was a doctor named Susan Blackmore, and she did some tests. She had a couple of out of body experiences herself,
Hmm.
but she had it down to where if she didn't like where she was floating, she could adjust it and go float somewhere else and go wherever she wanted. So she had some students, and she told the students, because this is really hard to prove, right? And it's really hard to test. So what she did is she put some words on her fridge and told her students, all right, you know, go to bed, meditate, do it at home. But when you do your out of body experience, come by my house and see what letters or words I've got on my fridge, and then let me know. That way you can kind of test it and you can see if it's really happening. Well, none of her students have ever been able to do that. So she hasn't been able to prove that, you know, the out of body experience is actually happening for other people, even though she's experienced it herself.
I kind of feel like that's the
Interesting.
problem with science in this stuff. It to me is like if you're trying to scientifically prove that somebody can shoot a basket into a hoop by repetition, right? And so you pick somebody who's a really sucky basketball player and say, okay, here's a basketball, throw it in there, and they can't hit the hoop for the life of them, right? And so scientifically, you're like, doesn't happen. You can't throw a basketball into a goal and make it, right? But obviously, that's not true because there are people who are skilled at it, who are trained at it, who can stand at the free throw line and hit 10 out of 10. So
Every
I
time,
don't know
yeah.
that you can necessarily look at the scientific experience and say, okay, just because Susan Blackmore invited her class of psychology students to do this and none of them were able to do it, that it's invalid. But I think you maybe could say that if you got like these skilled people and you're asking these skilled people who claim to do this on a regular basis, and they can't do it, but to
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of newbies that don't even know how to
Right.
to do this to their body or their spirit. I don't know that it really proves anything.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
there's remote viewers that have a high degree of accuracy uh, doing certain things like that, and different things. But I think they're kind of very similar.
There was an experiment that I read about, happened back in the 60s, I think 1968. His name was Dr. Charles Tart. He was a psychologist, and he had a client who said that she had these out of body experiences, and so he was like, "Okay, I'm going to test this." And he said, "You're going to sleep in my office, and as you go to sleep and you have one of these out of body experiences, I want you to read a. I'm gonna put a number up on a shelf where you can't see it. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but when you come out of this out of body experience, I want you, or when you go into it, I want you to go up and read this number and then report the number back to me when you come out." And so he didn't even write the number down until she had fallen asleep. And then he put it up on some shelf way above her where she couldn't see it. And um, and he remained in the room the whole time to make sure that she actually wasn't like getting up and trying to look at the thing or whatever. And so she had the out of body experience, and she came back and she told him, "Yeah, your number's 5." And he was like, "That's the number." And so he and his assistant were like, "Okay, is there a way that she might have could have seen this, from where she was? Is there a reflection? Because obviously she didn't get up and see it, and it was way on a shelf, face up, something where she wasn't able to see it from the bed that she was in." And so he was like, "No, there's no way. There's nothing that she could have reflected that off of and seen. It was something that she that she either remarkably guessed well, or she actually saw it. And with her, he said she had what he would her mental faculties were weird, and he said she probably got schizophrenia, which kind of makes me wonder if the schizophrenia doesn't kind of open you up to uh, spiritual experiences, paranormal experiences that maybe everybody could be open up to if we didn't have things blocking them, right? If we didn't have like people training us.
Right.
Like filters.
Yeah, well, like erected filters that people say, like when you're a kid, you're talking to your imaginary friend or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and people are saying, they're saying, it's just an imaginary friend. The kid's sitting there going, it's not imaginary. There's a person here,
Right.
and they're sitting there having a conversation with a ghost apparently. But the people are telling, the parents are saying, no, there's nobody there, Billy. There's no person there, and so over time, that filter is kind of erected in that person, and then Billy no longer sees that. And I wonder if somebody who's maybe got schizophrenia doesn't have that filter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, they can hear it all.
Right.
And so, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that they're actually being able to experience these things that other people probably could experience if they just knew how to get there.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was reading something the other day about fMRIs on schizophrenic patients. And they were checking out brain activity when the patients said they were hearing voices, and they would do these fMRIs. Well, the parts of the brain that light up when you and I speak to each other, they would light up when the schizophrenic people said they were hearing voices. They're hearing something.
Interesting.
And their brains are translating something. It's just nobody else can hear it. So for that part of the mechanism, it works perfectly just like everyone else. So you're right, man. Maybe they are hearing spirits or different things. And maybe spirits can pick up on that. And if there's a way that you hear it, maybe they do their best to just drive you mad if they're demonic or things like that. And Father Malachi, you guys ever listen to Art Bell back in the day when he was still around? And now the new show is okay. It's not, I like Art way better, but
yeah, Art Bell's the best.
Yeah. He's classic, man. But he was talking to Father Malachi, and there's 3-hour interview segments. And I was listening to one yesterday at work. I usually, I'll either watch a movie or I'll do some research, or I was actually taking a nap, and I had my AirPods in. I was listening to Father Malachi talk about demon possession, and he was that's all he did was exorcisms for the Vatican for many, many years. And he said that a majority of schizophrenic patients he felt could be helped by exorcism. And he said he's seen literally hundreds of people that were diagnosed as schizophrenic go through exorcism with the church and are normal afterwards.
Wow.
So,
things that make you go,
it kind of makes you wonder.
Do you know what Dr. Charles Tart called his dad, though?
Pop-Tart?
Pop-Tart?
Yes.
That's the lamest fucking joke I've heard all week. That's great. Nice job.
That was
Brian.
part in the research.
Really good.
That was straight up in the research. Just saying.
Better than holy cow. Far better.
Better than holy cow.
Man, everybody's going to stop listening after that. We're going to come really next week. No,
please don't stop listening.
Listeners.
Yeah.
Well, there's an experiment they did too that I think the result was how our mind works and how our perception changes. So what they did is they set a person down and they had like a folder and they made it in a TP shape and laid it on a desk. So what this lady did, she put her hand underneath it. Is that visual right? So you got your folder, TP shape like this, and you put your hand underneath it where she can't see your hand. Okay. And the TP is over her left hand. Her right hand is out of the picture. So next to that on the outside where she could see was a rubber hand. Okay. Now, the scientist that's on the other side grabbed a little paintbrush or something, and what they do is they rub the finger of her real finger at the same time they're rubbing the rubber hand. And a lot of times the visuals, she's seeing them rub the rubber hand and it would switch and she would actually start to get feeling by her rubbing the rubber hand because she saw it and not her real hand. So her mind is seeing it rubbing the rubber hand and translating that information into real touch. I don't know how that translates to an
We're all
OBE,
living in a
but
simulation.
right? Well, you can see
Yeah,
how easy
it's
it is
creepy.
to maybe manipulate some of our senses into thinking something that really isn't there. And maybe that's
Maybe.
part of the
Yeah.
OBE experience.
Maybe so.
Maybe. Do you have any other examples, Scott?
I'm not. I talked to you about some of this stuff before. I don't even remember what I talked about once we actually started. Did I talk about that teacher that I had? I didn't. Okay.
No.
All right.
No.
So actually, I had
Maybe
a
you should
couple.
bring that
tell.
up.
I had a couple of people. It's interesting when you're talking to people and the people don't think that you think they're crazy. They'll tell you stuff that they wouldn't tell you otherwise. And so, I try to, when I'm talking to people, I always fish for stuff like this because it just interests the hell out of me. I love to hear people's stories. And I've heard enough of them that I don't think anybody's nuts anymore. So people can just freely talk. But um, I'll tell more like a client that I had first, who she said she was sitting at her dad's bedside right before he passed, and she said as he was breathing his last, she looked over at him and literally saw what looked like a mist coming out of his mouth, and then he died. So it was like she told me, I saw his spirit leaving him. And you visually saw. I asked her specifically, I said, this wasn't like a
That's a
spiritual
trip.
feeling that you had. I said, you actually saw this with your senses. And she said, yeah. It was like a mist leaving, and that's when they called it. That's when.
Just
It's
like a
too
white
bad she didn't
mist.
have a jar. You could just like
Poor guy.
shoved it
Stuck
back
in a mason jar for the rest of
like,
eternity.
I could have gone to heaven, but now.
How weird.
That's crazy, though,
But yeah, really, I had a different client who at one time told me, she said that they had two dogs that were real close to the owner, and they would sit at his side and sit at his side, just loved him and loved him all as he was sick.
Mm.
And then the moment that he died, they got off of the bed and they wouldn't have anything to do with him. It was like the dogs could sense the spirit was gone, and they didn't have anything to do
Have
with
either
the
of
guy.
you ever seen anyone die?
Yeah, my mom.
Yeah, no.
And you were there.
Yeah.
That feeling is very strange. Though, you can tell the second they're gone, it's a shell.
Hmm.
There's for me anyway. There was no doubt in my mind. It was a feeling where I knew the person was there, and then the minute they died, done, man. It's a shell. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
Yeah.
So, and actually, the thing you said about the mist, something rings true about that. I've heard that from other people, or I've read that somewhere. That's a real thing. And wasn't there a show about that when the spirit leaves the body, and scientists were saying they were measuring people in hospice, and their body weight changes minutely.
Yeah, like an
It,
ounce or something like that.
it's less than that. It's very small.
Hmm.
But on average, their body weight changes very, very slightly
Yeah, I have heard that.
when they die.
So our
I don't
soul
know,
has some weight to it.
Yeah,
or at
actually,
least maybe some water mass, or if it's a mist, I don't know. It's something to it. I don't know.
Interesting.
but I was
Hmm.
talking to this other the teacher that I had as well, who had clinically died 3 times.
Wow.
She was pronounced dead 3 separate times, and each time they resuscitated her. And 2 of the times that she died, she actually had out of body experiences. She was telling me about. One of them was uh, the one that you hear so often, where they see the bright light. And she said the only way I could describe it was there was a bright light that I was kind of floating towards, and she said, although it was a one light, it was many, and I can't explain what that.
Hmm.
I can't explain what that was or why I am saying what I'm saying. But there was one light, but it was many. So then I was floating towards that. Go ahead, Matt. You're gonna say something.
No, I was just my brain is. I was just thinking about the light and how, um, I've heard it told both ways, where you're going towards the light, and then in my mind I'm always like, man, if I ever die, do I go towards the light or do I not go towards the light? Because everybody says, the devil comes as an angel of light, and his name is Lucifer Morningstar, right? And he's the one who looks the brightest, and he's very beautiful, and all these things, and it plays in my brain, like, I'm like, do I go towards the light? Do I dip out? Do I like just take a right? Like, if I take a right, am I
Dip out.
stuck here forever? Do I just, you know what I mean? Like, what? Everybody's like, go towards the light, and I'm like, maybe not. Like, the light might be awful. You know what I mean? Like, you might get really close, and then the music starts to get really bad, and then you just go down a
if
slide,
if
or
the
I don't
if
know.
the light
It's just
has music playing accordion music, I would be taking a sharp left.
Of course,
I've
the
always had a
polka.
music track
Not going
going,
there. Not
in
going
my
there.
mind.
If it's
The polka,
Yeah, you got
everybody's
Weird Al.
favorite, polka, polka, polka.
You got Weird Al Yankovic playing your music.
John
Oh,
Candy.
anyway, she
Yeah,
yeah.
said she was heading towards this
that's
light, and I
awesome.
don't think she was swimming towards it. She was just floating towards it. So I don't think she had a choice at that
Yeah,
point. I don't think she had to
yeah.
put it in reverse or anything like that. But she was floating towards there, and she said her husband, who had died a few years earlier, was there. And she's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to finally see you." And he's like, "No, not right now." And she's like, "Why? I don't want to be on Earth anymore." And he's like, "Not your time, not your time. You need to go back." She's like, "I don't want to go back. I just want to be here with you." "Nope, you got things to do and people who need you." And she told me, she said she ever since he died, she'd been like a miserable person who, she just didn't find it like any value to living and didn't want to be here. And she said after she came back from that and having had that conversation with her husband, her entire viewpoint, her entire vantage on life shifted. She like suddenly had a purpose again, and she was happy to be here. And so it was like this out of body experience
That's
did
fabulous.
something for her spiritually to kind of change her
Yeah.
sense of purpose and reason to be. And she said the second out of body experience that she had was in the hospital, where she then um, relayed a conversation that the doctor was having with her children, and she had told the doctor what he said to them, and he's like, "Yeah, there's no way you could have heard that because I was in a different wing of the hospital having that conversation." And she's like, "Here's what you were wearing, and here's where you were standing, and here's where they were standing, and this is what you said." And he's like, "Huh, okay." So something.
There's something going on there for sure. Like that's something, and those kind of out of body experiences that are life changing, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people that have them. I mean, people have them and write books and change everything they do. Like, there's something to it, fellas. There's some kind of reality to those kind of things. I think that is just very tangible to people. Changes their whole existence.
And it's to me, this is different when it's coming from somebody that's telling you stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That they're not bullshitting you. She had no reason to say this stuff to me. I was just staying after class one day, and she was having this conversation with me. It's like,
Right.
why would she lie about this? It's completely different than when you watch a YouTube TED talk or something with, maybe somebody's trying to get notoriety, trying to write a book or something like that. They could lie
Right.
about stuff for that. But it's different when you know somebody, you have a relationship with them, and they start telling you this kind of stuff. It's like, huh, maybe there is something to this.
Well, if there's anybody that watches this podcast or listens to it, and you've had an out-of-body experience or something close to that, please write us. We'll talk about it on the show, and it would be amazing to hear from some people that have actually had those experiences.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be awesome to even have someone on, get a hold of us, and then we'll see what we can do. So the teacher you were talking about, was it a planned out-of-body experience or just
Definitely
sort of happened?
not a planned experience. No, she was very ill, and well, like I said, she clinically died 3 times, and it was after 2 of those that she had this out-of-body experience. So no, it was not planned.
Yeah.
How cool must that be? No more fear of death. Like, your husband's waiting for you. You got stuff to do down here. She's probably the most happy and productive person.
She's pretty chill
ever.
I mean, she's still got physically some stuff going on with her, but yeah, she was definitely pretty chill.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's like some of those people that took DMT, where they come back and their whole life is changed.
Different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know several people that have not done DMT, but have done different hallucinogenics, very strong, like mushrooms and things like that said that it had really changed the path of their life. And it did, actually.
It's almost like a forced out-of-body experience when you're doing that. Maybe you're not achieving it through meditation or whatever. You're using the help of, chemicals and some, drugs, but...
yet people have been doing it for thousands of years. There's a reason.
Yeah.
And primitive people, didn't have any distractions like we have, man. It was hunt, gather, and sit on your ass and conserve calories, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they had time to get in touch with those things. And I'm sure they were much more intuitive than we are, and much more connected to their spirit and things like that than we're aware of. So there's probably a lot to it.
I don't know if it happened as often because the caveman didn't have pantyhose back then. So they had,
a vine will do.
They had to use a vine or
maybe a friend.
Intestine or something.
The trick is to never leave the cave. You always got to have somebody close by in case they got to, bring you around.
That's right. I think we just found a title for this episode.
David Carradine, Pantyhose, out-of-body experiences.
Carradine.
Poor Dave. Never live it down. Next time, be more careful.
Carradine.
Out-of-body experience or autoerotic asphyxiation.
Right.
That's right. Always have somebody nearby and get a safe word, because you never
leave the cave. Wow. Okay.
These things are not safe for work.
That's right. That's right. Well,
we're fine.
Any final thoughts on this, guys, before we wrap it up?
I'm definitely interested in trying it. I mean, I find this to be so very intriguing. I'm definitely gonna look further into it and see what happens.
I think the key is with a lot of this stuff is to be able to meditate and to get into that zone, quote unquote, I guess. That's what I feel anyway.
Well, they kept on saying it's your intention, and I think honestly, a lot of people today lack intentionality on just about anything. Right? They're just kind of floating through life. They don't have any reason to get up in the morning. They don't have any reason, got to go earn money, but why? I mean, they got no particular love. They got no particular value for life or goals or anything like that. So they lack intentionality. I think that if anything, this encourages intentionality, and it fosters intentionality once you do it. From what I've, the people that I've listened to, and I think that if there's nothing else that comes from it, I think that's good.
Right.
Yeah. Good point. Matt, you got anything else?
And meditation's healthy. It's good for your blood pressure. It's good for your mind, body, and spirit, apparently. So, I
could use that.
I think it's positive.
Yeah.
I'll continue to try as well, and we'll try and experiment on the next show with OBE and remote viewing and all that.
Remote viewing. We're hoping to have results from the test that Scott and Matt are going to do on the remote viewing, so we can reveal that on the next podcast.
I know.
It'll be awesome one way or the
other.
It'll be awesome.
That's right.
One way or the other. It'll be awesome.
We'll either be awed by you or we'll make fun of you. One or the other. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Either way, it'll be great for us.
That's right.
I can't wait.
All right.
Can't wait. All right. You're up, Matt.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening this week. Shout out to Jackie G for the great support and review. Keep them coming. Thanks very much for that. Welcome to our new listeners, and thanks so much for listening. Send us an email as to where you are listening from so we can give a shout out. If you enjoyed the podcast, please go to our website and click on the podcast magazine link. Look for the Hot 50, click, chat, and vote away. Please send us your comments, suggestions, complaints, or questions to show@ourdifferenttake.com. You can also call our voicemail hotline to submit questions or comments or really anything you want. Joke of the day. Just call 970-343-4594. It's 970-343-4594. Don't forget to rate us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to the podcast. You can also hear us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, radio.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, Ghana, Deezer, and everywhere you like to get your favorite podcasts. We now have a YouTube channel called Our Different Take. Please subscribe and click on the bell so that you'll be alerted when a new podcast is released. If there's a certain subject you'd like us to talk about, please let us know. We really will take it seriously and get your content all showed up.
Absolutely.
There you go.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Have a good week.
Thanks,
Peace.
everybody.
Peace out.
Bye.